Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Room Floor. This is where I take a little time and dig into a biblical topic or biblical theme or idea that came up in a recent sermon, and we just go a little deeper into something. We chase a little rabbit trail for a bit, and today I want to look at some more information, some more background to a story we looked at in Luke's Gospel, Luke chapter 4. And this is where Jesus actually he goes to a synagogue. He goes to his hometown synagogue and he preaches what is his first sermon there. And you can find this in Luke chapter 4, beginning at verse 16 or so, and it goes on through to about verse 30. I thought it would be fun to dig a little more into what synagogues were or are. They are found quite frequently in the New Testament. Jesus is actually kind of based out of a synagogue in Capernaum. And later on in the New Testament, when Paul goes on his missionary journeys, one of the things he's doing all the time is going into the synagogue in whatever city he happens to be visiting. So synagogues play a really important part in the life of the New Testament. I want to show you a couple things. Let me just share my screen here. And you should be able to see here this picture of a synagogue in Capernaum. Now, this is just speculation. This is just kind of imagining what it might look like. It's kind of an artist's reconstruction. And keep in mind, this is in Capernaum and not in Nazareth, where the story we looked at in Luke chapter 4 took place. You can see it's a very simple building. A synagogue was really a place of gathering for the Jewish community, especially as the Jewish community was spread out over the Mediterranean world. So synagogues don't really show up in our Bible until the New Testament. They're not found in the Old Testament, because in the Old Testament, the worship was primarily centered at the temple. And then as you had Roman occupation, Greek-Roman occupation, and the life in the temple was changed very dramatically. You still have the temple, but now you also have these little synagogues. And a synagogue is really just a gathering place. And typically what would happen in these places is a number of elements. There would be always a reading from the Torah and from the prophets. And there would also be a sermon given, and the sermon would be simply an interpretation or an application of what was being read in the Torah and in the prophets. Commonly, you'd also have times of prayer as well. And wherever the synagogue was, it was customized to the local context. And so in that sense, it was different too from the life in the temple, where it was, one temple served all the people. But what I wanted to just draw your attention to was what was customary in the synagogue was you would have someone come up and read from the scroll, usually from Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament, but also then from the prophets. And then they would give an interpretation and an explanation of that. And so in Luke chapter 4, this is really what Jesus is doing. He's interpreting that passage, and it was customarily done. It's not like Jesus was doing something really unusual there. Frequently, you could have someone come up and give the message. And what was interesting is in those days when the scripture was read, the person would stand and then they would sit down afterwards. And when they're sitting down, that's the indication that they are giving their own commentary or their own explanation. Let me take you to a couple of other images here. This is a similar, you can see it's the synagogue at Capernaum. Again, it's what a typical synagogue would have looked like. Here's something I think kind of interesting. Again, this is imagining Capernaum. This is what Capernaum looks like today, but you can see a synagogue, a fairly simple building superimposed on top. You can kind of, if you take away that's what's left today, you can kind of slide that slider there, and you can see that what remains are these ruins here today. And that's what it would look like if the synagogue were there. What I really want to show you for just a moment is a picture of the oops, that's the wrong one. A picture of where Jesus was thrown off the precipice. So Jesus gives this sermon. Oh, let me do this. Let me show you just a little more. This might be what sometimes the synagogue could meet in a person's home, and so you can just kind of imagine what this might look like. You've got all these different rooms, gathering places, but they would have been in a person's home. So yeah, I wanted to show you here a picture, which I will do in just a second. All right, I think I found a way to do this again here. All right, you should be looking at this screen now. This is actually a modern day. This is today's view in Nazareth. This is the place where the crowds were trying to throw Jesus down the precipice of this hill. And that would have been, you can see it's a fairly rocky hill. And so you can imagine at least how if they take Jesus, they take a person up here and throw him down, it would have the potential to do enough damage to actually kill a person. And of course, they were scandalized by what Jesus was saying, because he was indicating to the Jewish people that God's mission was not to be limited just to Jewish people, but the blessings of God, not only were they spiritual blessings, but they were blessings that would tend to the material needs of the people, to healing the sick and caring for the hungry and so on, and that the Gentiles, the non-Jewish people, would become the recipients of those blessings. And when Jesus said that, the crowds were obviously very upset by that. They believed that God's blessings would be primarily nationalistic in their scope, but also that they would be primarily for the Jewish people. And so Jesus, right at the beginning of his ministry, he is challenging many of those assumptions, and that was scandalous enough that they take him to the top of this hill here, and they attempt to throw him down. Their plan was to throw him down so that he would be dead by the time he hit these rocks. Now, Luke simply tells us that Jesus walked away. He walked through the crowds without, the crowds being able to throw him off that cliff. But and how that happened, we really can only guess at that. But that's what Luke tells us. So that gives you a little picture of what Jesus would have been. Where he would have been almost thrown from in the synagogue there. All right. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for joining me again. We'll come back next week. I want to next week host a little conversation on what the Bible has to say about poverty when it talks about blessed are the poor. So join me then. It's sure to be a good, interesting topic. We'll talk to you then. All right. Thanks again for joining me.